The champagne fountain caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through the cathedral windows, casting tiny rainbows across the white marble floor. 300 guests sat in velvet, cushioned pews, dressed in their finest, murmuring about how beautiful the bride looked, how handsome the groom was, how perfect this summer wedding seemed to be. The string quartet played Pachelbel's canon. The air smelled of white roses and expensive perfume and the kind of hope that only exists before vows are spoken. And there I stood, in the doorway of St. Augustine's Cathedral on Peachtree Road, wearing a crimson dress that cost exactly $200, the same amount Derek had once told me was too extravagant for a dress I'd wanted for our anniversary. My heels clicked against the stone floor as the massive oak doors swung shut behind me. The music faltered. The murmuring stopped. Every single head in that cathedral turned to look at me. Derek's face went white. His bride, Jessica, in her 35,000 Varawang gown that I knew for a fact she'd put on the American Express Centurion card, gripped her bouquet so hard the stems must have bruised. I walked down that aisle like I was the one getting married. Slowly, deliberately. My footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. "You can't be here," Derek hissed when I reached the altar. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His perfectly pressed tuxedo suddenly looked too tight around his collar. I smiled. "Oh, I'm not staying long," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I just wanted to deliver something. A wedding gift, if you will." I reached into my clutch and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Held it up. "You might want to check your accounts before you sign that marriage license. Darling." I let that word drip with honey and venom. Because as of 9 o'clock this morning, every credit card, every bank account, every investment portfolio you thought was yours, frozen, seized, gone. The gasp from the crowd was audible. A wave of whispers crashed through the cathedral. Jessica's face twisted. "What is she talking about? Derek, what is she?" And before you think I'm bluffing, I turned to face the guests, his business partners, his country club friends, his elderly mother in the front row, clutching her pearls. "You should all know that the FBI is currently executing a search warrant at Derek's office. Something about 2 to 3 million in embezzled funds, forged documents, wire fraud." I leaned in close to his ear, close enough to smell his fear, sharp and acrid beneath his Tom Ford cologne. "You should never have used my signature without my permission, Derek." One sentence. That was all it took. Before the story begins, please leave us a comment telling us which state or city you are watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe so this channel can grow and bring you more exciting stories. Now, let me tell you how it all started. 5 years ago, I was the happiest woman in Atlanta. My name is Camille Harrison, Camille Mitchell. Back then, and at 32 years old, I had everything I'd ever dreamed of. A successful interior design firm that I'd built from nothing. A beautiful home in the Buckhead neighborhood, a restored 1920s Tudor with original hardwood floors, and a garden that bloomed with hydrangeas every spring. And Derek, my husband of 4 years, the man who'd swept me off my feet at a charity gala, who'd proposed under the stars on a rooftop in Paris, who told me every morning that I was the best thing that ever happened to him. I believed him. God, how I believed him. Our mornings had a rhythm that felt sacred. I'd wake at 6:15, the soft gray light filtering through our bedroom curtains, and slip out of bed to make coffee. Ethiopian yirgacheffe, freshly ground, brewed in the copper French press Derek had bought me in Morocco. The kitchen would fill with that rich, earthy aroma while I prepared breakfast. Fresh fruit, Greek yogurt with honey from the farmer's market on Piedmont Road, toast with the fig jam I made every summer. Derek would come downstairs at 6:45, still adjusting his tie, his dark hair slightly damp from the shower. He'd wrap his arms around me from behind, kiss my neck, murmur something sweet against my skin. "What would I do without you, Cammy?" he'd say. I'd hand him his coffee in the blue ceramic mug he always used, the one with the chip on the handle that I kept meaning to replace, but he insisted he loved. He'd take his first sip, close his eyes, sigh with satisfaction. "Perfect," he'd say. "You're perfect?" Those mornings felt like poetry. What I didn't know was that the poem was fiction. Derek worked in commercial real estate development. At least, that's what he told me. He was a vice president at Meridian Properties Group, handling acquisitions and investments worth millions. I was proud of him. I supported him through the long hours, the late nights, the weekends when he had to close a deal or schmooze investors. I understood. Business was demanding. Marriage meant sacrifice. Meanwhile, my own firm, Harrison Interiors, was thriving. I'd started it with 12,000 in savings and a used laptop, designing living rooms for friends of friends. By the time I married Derek, I had a team of 8 designers, a showroom on Howell Mill Road, and clients who paid me $50,000 to have me transform their homes. But I never flaunted my success. Derek had made a comment once, early in our marriage, about how important it was for a man to feel like the provider. I loved him. I wanted him to feel secure. So I downplayed my income, let him believe his salary was what kept us comfortable, even though my firm generated 3 times what he made. Looking back, I see how foolish that was. How dangerous. My best friend since college, Laura Chen, told me once that I was too generous. You give and give and give, she said over wine at her apartment in Midtown. What does he give you back? Love, I said immediately. Security, a partner, someone to build a life with. Laura had pressed her lips together in that way. She did when she disagreed but didn't want to fight. Just, promise me you'll keep your eyes open, Cammy. Men like Derek, charming, handsome, ambitious, they're not always what they seem. You're being paranoid, I laughed. Derek adores me. He wouldn't even look at another woman. Laura had nodded, but her eyes remained troubled. Little did I realize that Laura already knew something I didn't. Something she wouldn't reveal until it was far too late. My days were full and fulfilling. I'd leave for the showroom by 8, spend the morning meeting with clients and reviewing design boards, then visit construction sites in the afternoon to oversee installations. The scent of sawdust and fresh paint became my perfume. The weight of fabric samples in my hands felt like possibility. I loved transforming empty spaces into homes, taking 4 walls and filling them with warmth and beauty and meaning. At night, I'd come home exhausted but happy. Derek and I would cook together, or rather, I would cook while he poured wine and told me about his day. We'd sit on our back patio, the string lights I'd hung twinkling above us, the sound of crickets filling the warm Georgia evening. I love our life, I told him one night, my head on his shoulder. So do I, he said, kissing my hair. But I noticed things. Small things. A flicker in his eyes when his phone buzzed. The way he'd angle the screen away from me, just slightly. How he started going to the gym more often, or said he was. The new attention he paid to his appearance, the designer cologne I hadn't bought him. The way he'd check his reflection a beat too long in the hallway mirror. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself he was just trying to look good for me. I told myself that after 4 years, a little mystery was healthy, but that moment would change everything. The day I discovered the truth started like any other. It was a Thursday in September, the kind of crisp autumn morning when the leaves are just starting to turn and the air holds that sharp promise of change. I'd left for work early, planning to meet a fabric supplier in Decatur before heading to the showroom. But the supplier called to cancel. His daughter had broken her arm, he was at the hospital, could we reschedule? Of course, I told him. Family first, so I drove home, thinking I'd surprise Derek with breakfast in bed. He didn't have any early meetings that day, at least none he'd mentioned. I stopped at the little French bakery on Far Road, picked up almond croissants still warm from the oven, and headed back to our house with a smile on my face. The drive was only 10 minutes, just long enough to imagine his delight when I walked in, the pastry bag in my hand, coffee brewing fresh. Maybe we'd steal an hour together before work. Maybe this was exactly what we needed, a spontaneous moment of connection. I parked in the driveway and noticed something strange. A car I didn't recognize. A white BMW 5 Series, parked behind Derek's Range Rover. My first thought was innocent. A colleague, perhaps. Someone dropping off documents. But something cold settled in my stomach. A premonition I didn't want to name. I walked up the front steps, the paper bag from the bakery crinkling in my grip. The scent of almonds and butter mixed with the wet smell of morning dew on grass. My keys jingled as I unlocked the front door, and I remember thinking how loud they sounded in the quiet. The foyer was empty. The house was silent except for voices upstairs. A woman's laugh. Low, intimate, familiar. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else as I climbed the stairs. Each step took a lifetime. The Persian runner beneath my feet muffled my footsteps. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, drowning out everything else. The bedroom door was open. Not all the way, but enough. enough to see. Derek, my husband, the man I'd built my life around, lying in our bed, the Egyptian cotton sheets I'd chosen tangled around his waist, a woman's blonde head resting on his chest, and that woman looked up Laura, my best friend, my confidante, the person I'd trusted with every secret, every fear, every dream. The pastry bag slipped from my fingers. It hit the floor with a soft thud, sending flakes of croissant scattering across the hardwood. They heard it. Derek's eyes flew open. For one frozen moment, the three of us existed in a tableau of horror, me in the doorway, them in my bed. The morning light streaming through the windows I'd dressed with hand-embroidered curtains from Italy. Camille. Derek scrambled upright, the sheets falling away. Laura pulled the covers to her chest, her face pale, her lips swollen, her eyes unable to meet mine. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. My mouth opened and closed, but my voice had abandoned me. The room tilted. I grabbed the doorframe to steady myself. Baby, wait, let me explain. Derek was moving toward me, naked, reaching for his robe, his face arranging itself into an expression I'd never seen before. Panic. Feared underneath it. Something that looked horribly like calculation. It's not what it looks like, Laura whispered. The absurdity of that statement broke through my paralysis. Not what it looks like. My voice came out like a stranger's. Ragged. Raw. You're in my bed. With my husband. In my house. What exactly does it look like, Laura? She flinched at her name like I'd slapped her. Derek had his robe on now. He moved toward me, hands raised, palms out, like I was a wild animal he was trying to calm. Kami, sweetheart, please. Just let's talk about this. Let's sit down and… How long? The question cut through his performance. Or how? Long. Each word was a blade. He and Laura exchanged a glance. That glance. The kind of silent communication that only comes from intimacy, from shared secrets, from months or years of hiding. How long, Derek? The silence stretched between us like a wire about to snap. 18 months, Laura said quietly. The floor dropped out from under me. 18 months. A year and a half. Half of my marriage. Half of every dinner I'd cooked, every night I'd spent waiting for him, every lie I'd swallowed about late meetings and business trips and gym sessions. Get out. My voice didn't sound like mine. It was cold, empty. Both of you, get out of my house. Kami, please. Derek reached for my arm. I stepped back. Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again. Laura was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she gathered her clothes, her hands shaking. I'm sorry, Kami, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. Get out. They left. I stood in the doorway of my bedroom, our bedroom, and listened to their footsteps on the stairs, the front door opening and closing, the sound of 2 car engines starting and pulling away. And then I sank to my knees on the floor I'd refinished myself, surrounded by the home I'd decorated with love, and I broke. The sobs came from somewhere deep, somewhere primal. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was being crushed by an invisible weight. The taste of bile rose in my throat. I crawled to the bathroom and vomited into the toilet, retching until there was nothing left but dry heaves and tears. When I finally stood, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Mascara streaked down my cheeks. My hair was tangled. My eyes were red and swollen and hollow. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. The worst was yet to come. Over the next week, I discovered layer after layer of betrayal. Each revelation worse than the last. First, I found the credit card statements. Not the ones that came to the house. Derek had been intercepting those. I logged into our bank's online portal and saw the truth in black and white. The Cartier bracelet for $8,700. The weekend stays at the Ritz, Carlton, Naples. The dinners at Restaurant Eugene and Bacchanalia, and a dozen other places Derek had never taken me. All charged to our joint account. My money, funding his affair. Then came the emails. I shouldn't have looked. I knew that even as I opened his laptop, the password was still my birthday, the audacity of it, and found the folder he tried to hide. Business correspondence. How original. Hundreds of messages between him and Laura, spanning 18 months. Pet names. Love declarations. Plans for their future together, and references to me. She doesn't suspect anything. So trusting. It's almost sad. Once I get what I need from her, we'll be free. What he needed from me. The truth was far darker than I imagined. I called my accountant Marcus, in a panic. Something Derek had mentioned in one of those emails didn't make sense. A reference to my business accounts and the transfer. Marcus called me back within the hour, his voice grave. Camille, we have a problem. Derek, it turned out, had been quietly draining my company's operating accounts for the past year. Small transfers at first, easily overlooked in the flow of normal business expenses. But they'd grown larger. Bolder, he'd forged my signature on authorization forms. He'd created a shell company, Horizon Consulting LLC, and funneled $847,000 of my money into it. $847,000, my money. My sweat. My years of building something from nothing. And there was more. He'd taken out a second mortgage on our house. Our house, which was in both our names only because I'd trusted him, because I'd wanted him to feel like an equal partner, because love had made me stupid. $320,000 borrowed against our home. The loan documents showed his signature, and mine forged like everything else. I hung up the phone and threw it across the room. It shattered against the wall, and I didn't care. I screamed into the empty house, a sound of pure, primal rage and grief. That moment would change everything, but not in the way Derek expected. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Derek hired a lawyer, Mitchell Preston III from Preston & Associates, one of Atlanta's most aggressive divorce attorneys. A man known for destroying people on the stand. A man whose fees, I would later learn, were being paid with my stolen money. I hired my own lawyer, a woman named Patricia Hernandez, who came highly recommended. But Patricia was fighting uphill from the start. Derek had been thorough, meticulous. He'd laid the groundwork for months. He's claiming the business income was marital property. Patricia told me in her office on the 34th floor of a midtown high-rise. The city stretched out below us, indifferent to my crumbling life. He's saying he contributed significantly to your success, networking, client introductions, emotional support. That's insane. He barely knew what my company did. I believe you. But his lawyer is good, and he's got witnesses. Witnesses to what? Patricia hesitated. Laura Chen submitted a declaration. She says she witnessed Derek helping you with business decisions, entertaining clients, providing strategic advice. Laura, of course, the betrayal kept expanding like ripples from a stone thrown into still water. And the money? I asked. The $47,000 he stole? Patricia sighed. He's claiming it was a loan you authorized. He has documents with your signature. Forged signatures. Which you'll have to prove. Handwriting analysis takes time and money. And right now, Camille, she spread her hands. Your accounts are frozen in the divorce proceedings. You can't access the business funds. He's controlling the narrative. I left Patricia's office feeling hollowed out. The elevator ride down was a blur. In the lobby, I passed a woman in a beautiful silk blouse, one of my designs, I realized, from a collection I'd curated 3 years ago, and she looked right through me. That's when Derek's lawyer served me with papers demanding I vacate our home, the Tudor in Buckhead. The house I'd found, restored, poured my heart into. The garden where I'd planted every hydrangea with my own hands. He can't do this, I told Patricia on the phone, my voice cracking. He's claiming it's necessary for the sale. The court is allowing it. You have 30 days. 30 days to leave my own life behind. The humiliation reached its peak on a Tuesday afternoon in October. I was at the house, packing what few things Derek's lawyers would allow me to take, personal items. Clothing, some photographs. When the doorbell rang, I opened it to find a marshal with papers. Camille Mitchell, he asked. Yes. You're being served. He handed me the documents and left without another word. I stood in the doorway reading. It was a restraining order. Derek was claiming I was unstable and potentially violent, stating my erratic behavior since discovering the affair, demanding I stay 500 feet away from him at all times. The neighbors were watching. Mrs. Patterson from across the street, still holding her garden hose. The Thompson twins on their bikes stopped at the end of the driveway. The FedEx driver making his rounds, lingering a beat too long. I felt their eyes on me like physical weights. And then Derek's Range Rover pulled up. He got out, smoothing his jacket, and walked toward me with an expression of performative concern. Kaimi, I'm so sorry you're going through this. I really am. His voice was loud enough for the neighbors to hear. I just want us to resolve this peacefully. Behind him, Laura stepped out of the passenger seat. She was wearing a dress I recognized. A deer-wrap dress, emerald green, that I'd bought 2 years ago and never worn because Derek had said it made me look too flashy. Laura wore it now, standing beside my husband on my driveway. In front of my neighbors. You should know, Derek continued, his voice dripping with false regret, that I'm going to take care of things. The house will sell. You'll get your fair share. But you need to accept that our marriage is over. He paused, looked at Laura, smiled. Laura and I are engaged. Mrs. Patterson gasped audibly. The Thompson twins exchanged wide-eyed looks. I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. The restraining order trembled in my hands. Goodbye. Cammy. Derek took Laura's hand. I hope you find the help you need. They walked back to the car together. Laura glanced at me once, just once, and I saw something in her eyes that might have been guilt. Or satisfaction. I couldn't tell anymore. The Range Rover pulled away. I stood on my front porch, holding the restraining order as my neighbors watched and whispered. Rock bottom feels like falling forever and never hitting the ground. I moved into an extended stay hotel off Roswell Road that night. The room smelled like old carpet and industrial cleaner. The walls were beige. The bedspread was polyester. The ice machine down the hall rattled every 15 minutes. I lay on the hard mattress, staring at the water-stained ceiling, and wondered how my life had shattered so completely. My accounts were frozen. My business was in chaos. Clients were leaving, spooked by rumors Derek had been spreading about my mental state. My team was jumping ship, going to competitors, unable to wait out the uncertainty. I had 347 in a personal checking account Derek hadn't known about. That was it. That was all I had left of a lifetime of work. I called my mother that night. She lived in a retirement community in Savannah, battling early-stage Alzheimer's, and most days she didn't remember my name. Mom, it's Camille. A long pause. Camille, your daughter, your only daughter? Oh, another pause. Are you calling about your father? My father had been dead for 3 years. No, Mom. I needed to hear your voice. He left you something, you know. Her voice was dreamy, distant. In the bank. The special account. The one in Savannah. I dismissed it as confusion. She was always mixing up memories, confusing past and present. But something about her words stayed with me. What I didn't know was that my mother had just handed me the key to everything. 3 weeks after moving into the hotel, I was at my lowest point. I'd lost 11 pounds. I couldn't sleep. I'd worn the same jeans for 4 days straight. My lawyer's calls went to voicemail because I couldn't face more bad news. Then a package arrived. It came to the hotel's front desk, addressed to me by name. No return address. Inside was a sealed envelope, yellowed with age, and a single key on a silver chain. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. My father's handwriting stared back at me from the page. My dearest Camille. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone and you've needed to find what I left behind. I always hoped you'd never have to open this letter. I hoped your life would be full of nothing but happiness and that my little girl would never need a safety net. But I knew that someday your ship might sink. Your mother always said I was too cynical about love, but I've seen too many marriages fall apart, too many women left with nothing after giving everything. I couldn't let that happen to you. Go to First Coastal Bank in Savannah. The key opens a safe deposit box in your name. What's inside is yours, always has been. I've been building it since the day you were born. I knew you wouldn't need this unless your ship was sinking. And if it is, my darling girl, know that this is your life raft. Use it wisely. Rebuild, rise, and never let anyone make you feel small. You are brilliant and capable and so much stronger than you know. All my love, always, Dad. I read the letter 3 times. Then I held it to my chest and cried. Not the wrenching sobs of grief, but tears of something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. The next morning, I drove 3.5 hours to Savannah. First Coastal Bank was a small, elegant building on Bull Street, with marble columns and brass fixtures that spoke of old money and older secrets. The safe deposit box required 2 keys, mine and the bank's, and the manager who helped me was an elderly gentleman named Thomas who remembered my father fondly. Robert was a good man. Thomas said as he led me to the vault. We were sorry to lose him. The box was larger than I expected. Inside I found documents, stacks of them. Account statements showing $1 million in investments, accumulated over 34 years, compound interest working its quiet magic. Stock certificates in blue, chip companies my father had believed in. The deed to a commercial property in Atlanta. A building on Marietta Street that I hadn't known existed. currently generating $14,000 a month in rental income that had been automatically deposited into a trust in my name. And another letter, this one more recent, dated just months before my father's death. Camille, I've been watching the markets. I've been watching you too, through what your mother tells me. You've built something beautiful with Harrison Interiors. I'm so proud, but I've also been watching him. Derek. He asks too many questions about your finances. He takes too much interest in your success while contributing nothing of his own. I don't trust him. If you're reading this because of him, if he's hurt you, betrayed you, tried to take what you've built, know that I saw it coming. And I've made arrangements. The attorney listed below is a former colleague of mine, Margaret Chen. She's the best forensic accountant in Georgia, and she owes me a favor. Call her. Tell her Robert sent you. She'll know what to do. Don't let that man take anything else from you. Love, Stad. Margaret Chen. I called her that afternoon. She answered on the second ring. I've been waiting for this call, she said when I explained who I was. Your father told me you might reach out someday. Tell me everything. So I did. The affair, the fraud, the forged signatures, the frozen accounts, the stolen money, the restraining order. All of it. Margaret listened without interruption. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. He made mistakes, she finally said. Men like Derek always do. They get greedy, they get sloppy, and they underestimate the women they're trying to destroy. What kind of mistakes? The shell company, for one. Horizon Consulting LLC. He registered it in Delaware but forgot to properly obscure his own involvement. I can trace every dollar he moved. The forged signatures are another. Modern forensic analysis can prove you didn't sign those documents. And the second mortgage. I could hear her smile over the phone. He used a notary who's already under investigation for fraud. This case is a house of cards, Camille. And we're going to knock it down. That moment would change everything. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than despair. I felt power. 2. The next 3 months were a masterclass in patience and strategy. Margaret Chen turned out to be worth every penny of the significant retainer I paid from my father's trust. She was a small woman with steel, gray hair and glasses that made her look like someone's grandmother, but in a courtroom or a financial audit, she was a barracuda in pearls. She pulled every thread Derek had left dangling. The forensic handwriting analysis came back first. My signatures on the loan documents and transfer authorizations were definitively forged. Not similar enough. Too perfect, actually. Derek had traced them from other documents, creating copies that were too exact to be genuine. Then came the paper trail on Horizon Consulting. Derek thought he'd been clever, using his brother-in-law, his sister's husband, a man I'd never met, to serve as the registered agent. But bank records showed Derek as the sole beneficial owner. Every dollar he'd funneled from my accounts had gone directly into his pocket. He's been planning this for years. Margaret told me over coffee in her office. Long before the affair became serious, Laura was just a bonus, an accomplice. What do you mean years? The first transfers started 2 months after your wedding, Camille. Small amounts, a few thousand here and there. He was testing the waters, seeing what he could get away with. 2 months after our wedding. While I was still giddy with newlied bliss, still believing in forever, still trusting him with everything I had, my entire marriage had been a con. What do we do now? I asked. Margaret smiled. Now we build our case. And then we wait. Wait for what? For him to hang himself. She was right. Derek, confident that he'd won, made mistake after mistake. He put the Tudor house on the market for $1.8 million, planning to pocket the proceeds as soon as the divorce was finalized. He moved Laura into a luxury apartment in Midtown, $600 a month. Charged to a credit card he didn't realize was technically mine. He bought a new Porsche Cayenne, put down $40,000 in cash, and he announced his wedding to Laura. A lavish affair at St. Augustine's Cathedral, followed by a reception at the Atlanta History Center. Save the dates went out to 300 guests, many of them my former clients, my former friends, people who had abandoned me when the rumors started. Derek was so sure he had won. He had no idea that I was watching, recording, building a case that would destroy him. Patricia Hernandez, my divorce attorney, worked closely with Margaret. Together, they assembled a devastating file, evidence of forgery on 17 separate documents, bank records showing the systematic theft of $8047 communications between Derek and the corrupt notary, emails proving he'd conspired with Laura to gaslight me, to spread lies about my mental state, to isolate me from friends and family. And the crown jewel, a recording Laura had foolishly made on her phone. She'd meant to keep it as a memory, Derek promising her the world, promising that once he had that bitch's money, they'd live like royalty. He talked about me like I was nothing, less than nothing, a mark, a meal ticket. Laura had sent that recording to her iCloud account. And Laura, in a moment of characteristic stupidity, had used my old email address as her recovery option, an address we'd set up together years ago for a joint project, one she'd apparently forgotten about. I had everything I needed. Now it was time to use it. 2. The first step was the credit cards. This required some finesse. During our marriage, I'd been the primary cardholder on all our accounts, a legacy of my higher income and better credit score. Derek had been an authorized user, not a co-owner. I'd never thought about the distinction. Neither, apparently, had he. 2 weeks before his wedding, I walked into the main branch of Capital Bank on Peachtree Street and sat down with a manager named Helen. "I need to review my authorized users," I said, sliding my identification across the desk. Helen typed away at her computer. "Of course, Ms. Mitchell. You have 3 credit accounts with us. Would you like to remove any authorized users?" "Yes, all of them." She raised an eyebrow but complied. Within 20 minutes, Derek Mitchell was no longer authorized to use a single card in my name. I did the same at Chase, at American Express, at the Saks Fifth Avenue account he'd been using to buy Laura's clothes. Card by card, I dismantled his financial house of cards. Then came the bank accounts. During the divorce proceedings, our joint accounts had been frozen, but the freeze cut both ways. With Margaret's help, I filed an emergency motion presenting evidence of Derek's fraud. The judge, a stern woman named Patricia Rothwell, who had a reputation for despising liars, reviewed the forensic handwriting analysis and the paper trail. "Mr. Mitchell," she said at the emergency hearing, "you've been accused of forging your wife's signature on multiple financial documents. How do you respond?" Derek's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client maintains that." "I'm asking your client, counselor." Derek, for the first time since I'd known him, looked uncertain. "It's a misunderstanding, Your Honor. My wife and I had an agreement to forge her signature. No, an agreement that I would handle certain financial matters on her behalf, without her knowledge, without proper authorization. Derek faltered. His face was flushed. His hands were shaking. Judge Rothwell was not amused. "Based on the evidence presented, I'm ordering an immediate investigation into these allegations. Mr. Mitchell, your access to all marital accounts is suspended pending the outcome. Additionally, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges." "Criminal charges?" Derek's face went white. I sat in my chair, hands folded, face calm. Inside, my heart was pounding with something that felt like justice. The wedding was set for the last Saturday in June. I knew every detail because Derek, in his arrogance, had used a wedding planner who happened to be a former client of mine. She'd reached out after the hearing, horrified by what she'd heard about his behavior. "I had no idea, Camille," she said over the phone. "If I'd known what he did to you." "It's not your fault, Sandra, but I need to ask you something. Anything. Don't cancel on him. Keep planning the wedding. Make it beautiful. Make it expensive." A pause. "Why?" "Because I want him to believe everything is fine. I want him to spend every dollar he has left. And then I want to be there when it all falls apart." Sandra agreed. Over the next 2 weeks, Derek and Laura finalized their wedding plans, blissfully unaware that the ground was crumbling beneath them. Derek maxed out lines of credit, ones he didn't realize I'd severed. He wrote checks that would bounce. He promised vendors payments that would never come. And he had no idea that the FBI, acting on information Margaret Chen had provided to the U.S. Attorney's Office, was preparing to execute a search warrant on his office. The timing was exquisite. On the morning of the wedding at exactly 9:00 a.m., federal agents arrived at Meridian Properties Group. They seized computers, files, records, everything connected to Derek's embezzlement scheme. His boss, who had been kept in the dark about Derek's activities, was photographed by local news cameras looking absolutely furious. By the time Derek was adjusting his boutonniere at St. Augustine's Cathedral, his entire professional life was in ruins. He just didn't know it yet. And then I walked through those cathedral doors. I chose the crimson dress because Derek had once told me I should never wear red. Too bold, he said. Too attention-seeking. You're not the kind of woman who should try to stand out. So I stood out. I walked down that aisle with my head high, my heels clicking, my heart pounding with righteous fury. I saw familiar faces in the pews, people who had stopped returning my calls, who had believed Derek's lies, who had abandoned me when I needed them most. They would remember this moment for the rest of their lives. Derek's face went through a journey of emotions as I approached: confusion, alarm, fury, and then, as I spoke, terror. "You can't be here," he hissed. "Oh, I'm not staying long. I just wanted to deliver something. A wedding gift, if you will." I held up the paper, a printout of the search warrant, complete with the FBI logo. "You might want to check your accounts before you sign that marriage license, darling. Because as of 9 o'clock this morning, every credit card, every bank account, every investment portfolio you thought was yours, frozen, seized, gone." The gasp from the crowd was everything I'd imagined. And before you think I'm bluffing, I turned to face the guests. "You should all know that the FBI is currently executing a search warrant at Derek's office. Something about 2 or 3 million in embezzled funds, forged documents, wire fraud." Derek's mother made a sound like a wounded animal. His business partners exchanged horrified looks. The wedding coordinator stood frozen, clipboard clutched to her chest. And Laura, poor, stupid Laura. She stood at the altar in her 35,000 dress, bouquet trembling in her hands, realizing for the first time that she'd hitched her wagon to a sinking ship. I leaned in close to Derek's ear. "You should never have used my signature without my permission, Derek." One sentence. That was all it took. He lunged for me then. Actually lunged, but 2 of his groomsmen held him back. His face was purple with rage. Spittle flew from his lips as he screamed. "You crazy bitch! You'll pay for this!" "I'll destroy you," I smiled. "You already tried. And you failed." I turned and walked back up the aisle, slowly, deliberately. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. At the doors I paused, turned back. "Oh, and Laura, the dress looks lovely. Though I should tell you, Derek's cards were all declined 3 days ago. You might want to figure out who's going to pay for this wedding." Then I walked out into the afternoon sunshine, my head high, my heart full. Behind me I heard the chaos begin. Laura's screams, Derek's curses, the wedding coordinator desperately trying to restore order, guests fumbling for their phones, already spreading the story across social media. By nightfall, it would be everywhere. The aftermath was swift and complete. Derek was arrested 2 days after the wedding that never was. The FBI charged him with wire fraud, bank fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. His bail was set at 500,000, money he no longer had. Laura turned on him immediately, trying to cut a deal with prosecutors in exchange for her testimony. She told them everything about their scheme, how Derek had targeted me from the start, how they'd planned to drain my accounts and disappear together, how they'd laughed about my trust, my naivety, my love. Her cooperation earned her a reduced sentence. 18 months in a federal minimum security facility. Still, it was prison. Laura Chen, former socialite and yoga instructor, trading her designer wardrobe for khaki jumpsuits. Derek wasn't so lucky. His case went to trial, and the evidence was overwhelming. The forged signatures, the shell company, the stolen money. The recording Laura had made, played in court for the jury to hear. He was convicted on all counts, sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. I was there for the sentencing. I sat in the gallery, wearing a simple navy dress, my face calm. When the judge pronounced the sentence, Derek looked at me just once. His eyes were hollow, broken. "I'm sorry," he mouthed. I shook my head slowly. "No, you're not." Then I stood up and walked out of the courtroom, leaving him to his fate. Q. 3 months later, I sat on the back porch of my new home. A restored Victorian in Inman Park, with a wraparound porch and a garden that would someday rival the one I'd left behind. The evening was warm, the air filled with the scent of jasmine and the sound of crickets. I had rebuilt Harrison interiors from the ground up. Many of my former clients had returned, ashamed of having doubted me. New clients had found me through the extensive media coverage of Derek's trial. My firm was busier than ever, and this time, every account, every contract, every document was protected. I'd learned my lesson about trust. But I hadn't closed my heart entirely. Marcus, my accountant, the one who'd first alerted me to Derek's theft, had become more than a financial advisor over the past year. He'd been there through the darkest days, helping me untangle the mess Derek left behind. We'd started having dinner together, then breakfast, then nights that stretched into mornings. He was nothing like Derek, quiet where Derek was charming, steady where Derek was flashy, real where Derek was performance. "Penny for your thoughts?" Marcus asked, settling into the chair beside me with 2 glasses of wine. I took the glass, let the cool condensation press against my palm, just thinking about how much has changed. "For the better, I hope." I smiled. "Definitely for the better." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the Atlanta skyline. Somewhere out there, Derek was spending his first year in a federal prison cell. Laura was doing her time, learning that consequences have weight. The tutor in Buckhead had sold to a lovely family with 3 kids who had no idea of its history. I thought about my father, about the letter he'd left me, about his quiet faith that I would find my way through any storm. "I was finally home," I murmured. Marcus looked at me. "What was that?" I took his hand, wove my fingers through his. "Nothing, just, I'm home." He squeezed my hand and didn't ask for more. That was what I loved about him. He understood that some journeys couldn't be explained, only felt. If there's one thing I've learned from everything I went through, it's this: betrayal reveals who people really are, including yourself. You discover depths of strength you never knew you had. You learn that the people who truly love you don't need to take anything from you. You understand that justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about reclaiming what was stolen. My dignity, my self-worth, my belief that I deserved better. Derek thought he was destroying me. Instead, he set me free. And to anyone out there going through something similar, to anyone who feels beaten down and broken and alone, I want you to know that the story isn't over. You are more resilient than you know. There is help. There is hope. There is a future beyond the pain. Don't give up. Rise. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.